Welcome to the Wanderers History Podcast and to a new episode of the series Travelers Diaries of the 16th Century Mediterranean, now focused on accounts from 16th century Cyprus from Excerpta Cypria. In this episode, we look at the account of Giacomo Diedo, Venetian Senator, whose account draws information from Paolo Paruta's History of Venice, and in particular the fall of Cyprus. Before we continue, I'd like to please remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. It really does help the channel a lot. So let us resume. Diedo's account is an important one because it offers insights of how political figures at home, the Venetian terraferma, saw this conflict, the Ottoman-Venetian War, from afar. In particular, the motivations of the Ottomans for conquering Cyprus, breaking the peace of the Venetians, and causing turmoil in the eastern Mediterranean. In his account, Diedo goes on to say, Cyprus, henceforth reduced to a province, was defended down to the time of which we're about to speak against the turbulence of its inhabitants and the jealousies of its neighbors by the power of Venice. But now the Turkish Sultan Selim, who coveted the island, set himself to attempt its conquest, waving aside the considerations which had weighed with his predecessors, that the enterprise was difficult in itself and certain to stir up against his empire the forces of the Christian princes joined to the powerful armaments of the Venetians. However, one day he went out hunting with his principal pashas, the Turks call an assembly of this kind a mounted divan, and laid the question before them. The opinions at first were various, Mehmed the Grand Vizier maintaining that it would be more to the advantage and glory of the empire to carry its arms in another direction, either against Spain to check its aggrandizement and to set free the Moors of Granada, or against places which might pave the way to conquests in the fairest provinces of Europe. The kingdom of Cyprus was, he said, jealously guarded by the Venetians, the forts fully supplied with troops and artillery, and on the mere report that they would be attacked, the Republic had added wonderfully to the fortifications and fastnesses. It ought not to be difficult to the troops of Venice to prevent a landing, and to surprise vessels whose best men would be away, employed in the siege of the fortresses. And again, if on the rumor of an attack the Christian powers were stirred to a common defense, how difficult would be the task undertaken by the Porte of carrying on a war in violation of their pledges, and so soon after the signing of treaties of peace. On these grounds, prudence and the interests of the empire recommended that the acquisition of the kingdom of Cyprus should be deferred to a more convenient season, and that the Venetians should be lulled with the prospects of peace until they can be taken defenseless and unawares. Piali and Mustafa Pasha were of the opposite opinion, though rather for their private ends and their hatred of Mehmed than the real good of the empire. They suggested to the Sultan that the forces of his kingdom could not be directed to a worthier object than that of adding to it an island conveniently situated and serviceably rich, and which harbored the corsairs of the Levant, who obstructed the free passage of the seas and were a danger and menace to the Mussulmans on the voyage to Mecca. That the power of Venice was not sufficiently flourishing to resist the luck and valor of the Ottoman Empire, that the assistance of the princes of Christendom was uncertain and generally of little service. The past conflicts had made it clear that they might figure as an appendage or ornament without being a substantial help to their allies. That the defense of the Cypriot strongholds and the very existence of the kingdom depended solely on a few garrisons, which would be reduced by privations and assaults before they could be reinforced by expeditions from other countries. That the natives of the island had, through long peace, laid aside their military habits. The feudal soldiers had abandoned the use of arms for ease and luxury, and their stead were employed a low class of mercenaries. That an attack upon Spain would prove exceedingly difficult. The country was far off, mountainous, barren, and every step would cost blood and peril. Not but they must carry out the constant injunction of their ancestors to extend the empire by ever new conquests and keep alive the vigor which spreads through the whole body into its outlying members, but they need not seek in scattered and remote regions the ephemeral glory of ideal conquests, whose achievements were difficult and their maintenance certain to dissipate the power of the nation. Selim, encouraged by this reasoning, but still more incited by his own inclination for the enterprise, decided to carry it out, declaring that he would himself lead to the war a force worthy of his empire, and with his own royal presence offer resistance to any attack from the Christian princes. Setting aside therefore his project of uniting the Don and the Volga by a great canal, which was to facilitate his passage into Persia, having allayed certain risings of Arabs, and having received from the Pasha of Erzurum news of the peaceful disposition of the king of Persia, he issued strict orders for the construction of a large number of bomb vessels in the Gulf of Ayas and in the Mediterranean, for the fitting out which with all speed of the old galleys, and the building of new vessels, and sent express commands to the Beylerbeys of Anatolia, Captain General of Asia Minor, to concentrate the troops in all the provinces in Caramania. Such were the preparations of the Turks for an attack on the island of Cyprus, and although other pretexts were alleged to excuse them, common rumor and certain unmistakable signs made their purpose clear, as Marcantonio Barbaro, ambassador to the Porte, was able to assure the Senate. End of quote. I will come back with a follow-up, which was the reaction and reply of the Venetian senators to what Marcantonio Barbaro was saying. I think this moment is arguably one of the most important in the late 1560s and early 1570s when it comes to the Ottoman-Venetian relations. The volatile, mercurial nature of Selim II, especially compared to his predecessor, to his father Suleiman the Magnificent, but also the various influences around it. And I've spoken at length about this, about Piali Pasha, Mustafa Pasha, Joseph Nasi, also referenced in many books as Mikas. The mounted Divan, represents a quite important moment in what was the prelude to the Ottoman conquest of Cyprus, commencing in 1570. But also, it's important to notice that the Venetian government, the Doges, the Senate, it was the Council of Ten. They were complacent, and I've spoken at length about what had happened with the fortifications at Nicosia. You got that from the previous episodes, what happened ultimately at Famagusta. They couldn't hold on much longer. The Battle of Lepanto, the victory of the Christian forces, did not, in the long term, do anything for the Venetians, because Cyprus was ultimately lost. So I will return with a follow-up to this, continuation of Diedo's account. It's a very elaborate but a very good source from Excerpta, because it offers this crucial political, ambassadorial point of view, not just military and numbers and all of that, geomilitary stats. So thanks for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And stay tuned for the continuation of this episode. It will come soon. Thanks again, and until the next time, all the best.